In this week's Memes and Machines, we explore hot topics. Number one, the 9 to 5 job. Within the next 10 years, will we see the death of it and the continued rise of the gig economy? We then dive into friendships. Why should you reprioritize friendships? Not a normal Memes and Machines topic, but I love the conversation. And number three, we talk about underappreciated, sometimes seen as boring, not done enough marketing tactics that are tremendously effective.
I'm not going to say this is for everybody, but I would love a study to be run across everybody that says they get more done at home and see whether they actually get more done at home. Do they think they're getting more done at home, or are they actually doing more at home? I would love a study on that.
So in this episode, we talk about how the internet has provided me every single job I've ever had and interconnected all of us, but also potentially made us all more isolated working from home.
Sit back, grab a cold beverage from the fridge and relax, because you're now locked into the sounds of memes and machines.
Memes and Machines is back. Good to see you both. How you doing?
Very good, cheers.
Well, good, thank you.
There we go. Off the cue. I'm liking Ben's lighting. Not
I'm
sitting
not.
in the dark.
No, because it's so bright outside. It's like I can either have my curtains shut, but then it's like a sauna in here, because I never realised how much blackout curtains contribute to the heat of a room. And oh my god, it's so hot. Then I have the window open, and then the curtain is. My balcony is really windy, so
They say having your cake and eating it, you can't have all.
Yeah,
I was
real world problems. My balcony's too windy.
I was telling Chris before you joined, my big issue right now is my eyes have just blown up. We're at the end of summer, and I am getting the strangest allergies. I will wake up and my eyes are shut. I hope it's allergies, and I'm not doing something that is just. I have no idea what's happening to me. Is this middle age? What? Someone tell me, right?
You need to wash your pillowcases, mate. That's what you need to do.
Is that what it is? Pillowcases.
What do you mean your eyes a bit? What, they're just like swelling up?
When I say swelling up, I mean like they're almost shut. My lids and my under eyes just puff up, and it's full of water. It's very bizarre. They're not infected. I don't think they're infected. But for the last 4 days, every morning I wake up, and gradually through the day, they get better. But it's a very bizarre thing. Anyway, all our ailments aside, Chris sent me an article that said your 9 to 5 job is dying. By 2034, it will be extinct. Talking about the gig economy. This was Reid Hoffman, founder of LinkedIn, giving a prediction that in the next 10 years, the classic 9 to 5 will be dead and the gig economy will continue to thrive. Firstly, what do we think, gents? Are you aligned with Reid? Is this hyperbolic nonsense? What do we think? Chris, give me your take.
It was hard to know. I found it very controversial when I first heard it, because obviously you just wonder about what his insights are in order to give that type of prediction. But at the same time, I'm sure he does have a network of very high up people, being the LinkedIn founder, and therefore, has better insights than your average person as to where the jobs are going and the trends in data for that type of thing. But my first thought was actually towards YouTubers and the creator economy rather than the gig economy, because the gig economy to me is stuff like Amazon drivers and Pizza Hut drivers and people like that, whereas I think the creator economy is influencers and creators and stuff like that. And there is certainly a rise there. So if I was just to look at the landscape, because obviously I come from the perspective of a creative agency owner, at the amount of gigs that are given to influencers and creators individually versus agencies, that's a rapid rise in the creator and influencers getting gigs directly with brands, versus the agencies used to win this 100 times out of 100 until about 10, 15 years ago. So if that trend is, across all industries, I think he might be onto something. But is it that I'm just seeing a biased perspective in the industry we work in? I have no idea about law and accounting and all those other jobs. Like he's talking about the industries as a whole, and I know that it's definitely happening in my industry.
Yeah, the context is very, it's in relation to AI, right? The idea is that more and more organization, the way they're constructed, the way they're designed, the way they hire, the number of tasks that people do, many of them will be replaced by machines. That's kind of part of the story. The other is the
Possibly.
evolving needs of work. Like people have different wants. The 9 to 5 was created in the industrial age, and it kind of made sense for the way we lived life back then. There's a big argument that people want different things now. Do we need to work that much to be as effective, to get the economic outcomes that we need to live a healthy, prosperous life? I suppose that's the big macro question. But Ben, from your perspective, is this someone who is out of touch because they've been a billionaire for too long? Or is this like wisdom? Is this real foresight? What do you think?
I understand what he's saying. It's going that way, but it's not all going that way, because I guess the big question, and I ask myself, how do you get work if you've got no experience as a freelancer? What about young people? What about people leaving university? Oh, I'm just going to become a freelancer. That's not going to pay your bills. It's okay for 30, 35-year-old somethings who have worked 5, 10 years in corp to go freelance. Who's he talking about here? Because young people can't just finish and go to freelance. They've got no experience. Nobody's going to hire them. You have to work for free. Working for free doesn't pay rent. So I just think that's such a narrow perspective based on a subset of people that I think is probably, like millennials. I reckon that is based off of millennials who, and like we are seeing a growing trend post COVID of, I think mid 20-year-olds to 35-year-olds and even older, I would say, that are like thinking, what's the point of the 9 to 5? What's my purpose in life? It's like a mid 20s crisis, because it's funny. It's come with the birth of these running clubs as well, and I see it because I go to them and I talk to people, and lots of these running clubs and all of these like young people, I don't want to drink anymore, are all like trying to find their purpose. They're all trying to find more fulfillment, and a big part of that is their corporate job. Lots of them work corporate jobs, and all of them want to leave that corporate job. And so I think there is a growing trend for people becoming more freelancers, but that takes time. That takes time. You have to do corporate. I think in a lot of cases, you have to do corporate, or you have to be a young hustler. And don't get me wrong, there are lots of more young hustlers than there were 5, 10 years ago, because the internet has now mean that there's so much content that you can consume to learn a really, really good skill, like a hard skill. You don't have to go to university. You don't have to go to college. You just have to go on YouTube and put the hours in. And so maybe actually that, ironically, is defeats my original point, in that actually people will already have, may not have experience. I don't know. It's a complicated question to really think about and answer, because society's diversified in thousands of different types of jobs and people and experience. So I think that opinion is based on a subset of people in a certain position. But I do agree with, there's a general trend. If you said, Ben, do you think more people are going freelance over the next 10 years? And do I think that's going to be exponential compared to years previously? Yes.
Okay, well, look, that's the problem with like binary statements when they're so definitive.
Yeah.
9 to 5 jobs are dying. The answer is some of them will, many will evolve, but many won't, right? That's the reality. And I think you're right, Ben, in like it comes from a place of privilege of going, I've absorbed all these skills through osmosis and structure and I've been able to elevate status and have experience through corporate work. And yes, I'm in a privileged place where you can probably make more choices and do things on your terms. When you start your career, you don't have those things. What's really interesting, and this is maybe one of the unintended consequences of big societal shifts, like we can all agree the internet was a wonderful thing for many of us and many people, and allowed us to do things that weren't possible. But there were a whole host of things that came along with it. And one of the problems with the gig economy is what we're describing is everybody going independent. And what you said there, Ben, is people need a sense of belonging, a sense of community, and they're finding it in yoga clubs, they're finding it in online communities, they're finding it in different places now. And I'll give you one anecdote that kind of really hit home for me. When COVID struck and the world went remote, one of the things that I quickly realized is within society, what do we have that bonds us anymore? The office was a place where people, whether, rightly or wrongly, whether you would choose to be with these people or not, it gave people a sense of community. You had colleagues, you would have conversation, you would have social interaction, you had a sense of belonging, you were all working towards a bigger mission. Some of those missions are worthwhile, some of them are not. But when you remove that, you move towards a more secular society where religion is void. What is left for the average person? We don't talk to our neighbor anymore. We're all stuck behind screens for too long. Chris and I were talking before about like our back pain from being, sat all day. Like, if this is the truth, and let's assume that Reed is right, if we go in this direction, there is a cost. And I don't necessarily see it as a positive thing that we, work less. We all have this pursuit of work less. I think we should do more fulfilling work, but working less in isolation on your own behind the screen, I don't know if that's a good thing.
I tell you what, it makes you realize the great irony of the internet. We've never been more connected, and yet we've never been more isolated.
Yeah.
That's the truth of it, isn't it? It's like digitally we're all connected in insane ways, and like Ben said, you can learn nearly anything you want from YouTube these days. Like, I could take, like, even Harvard put out free courses on generative AI. Cambridge University do, like any one of these courses that any university is teaching is now available for free online, as long as you sit down at a computer and learn it in silo for however many hours it takes you to master that thing. But as a former university lecturer, that's missing out on group projects, talking to one another, being in the lecture theatre, and all of those things that are associated with actually being physically in the same space as other people. And honestly, if you ask me about the future of universities, and this is very controversial, I think it's all just going to be about commuting and meeting people, and it be a social experience, because AI will be able to teach us anything we want at any age. Like primary school kids with enough advanced knowledge will be computer scientists at the AI like level of learning if they want to do that in silo. But then university will play a part in that they need to collaborate with other engineers and scientists and things, and that's a meet-up place. So university will be a lot less about teaching and a lot more about community if they want to.
Were you teaching when it went remote, Chris?
No, I was already in the agency land when everything went remote, but I did do 3 years at Leeds College of Music, and at 1 year we had like a lot of the staff were wanting to do remote work, actually, because it is possible to, as a like music theory teacher, for example, do it via Zoom. And this is one of the things that was the argument then. And when Ben said, not everyone can do this, he's absolutely right. There are, in that working from home battle, like companies that require you to be there and will fire you if you don't turn up now. And then there's other companies that are completely okay with you operating remotely as long as you're doing your daily tasks and doing everything else, and they much prefer it. And I've seen employees handing in their notice going, I only want to work for a company that offers me remote work now. So, everyone's sort of like, after the pandemic, making their decisions about where they are, like family people are wanting to be at home with the family, although that is isolationist and they should still do social things like running clubs and stuff like this. That's their preference now, so it's a strange world. the pandemic really changed everything, didn't it?
It's interesting around, like you say, preference. There's like preference and what we need are always two different things.
Of course.
I would prefer to go downstairs and eat a scone.
People get
and I
those
would-
things very confused though.
Yeah, they do. They do.
They're different things.
Like, so all right, I'm just gonna come with a few of my opinions here, because when we went back to work, and we had some Twitch kind of had Amazon had a relax policy of like 2 or 3 days got to come in, but not really monitored. I chose to come in 4 days a week, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, because I wanted that community aspect. I wanted to chat to my colleagues. Didn't want to have to send messages through Slack all the time. I wanted to just see other people, chat to people, and the pushback from other people didn't come in. Oh, I get more done at home. Bullshit. I get more done at home. No, your preference is to be at home so you can do shit around the house. Like, bullshit. I would say that, like, I'm not going to say this is for everybody, but I would love a study to be run across everybody that says they get more done at home and see whether they actually get more done at home. Do they think they're getting more done at home, or are they actually doing more at home? I
Really
would love a study on that, because I challenge some people and say, do you actually get more done at home?
Well, this
Like,
goes so well.
You've got a world of distractions at home. At the office, all you can do is sit in your desk, go to the kitchen, go to the toilet. Like, you've got about 3 or 4 options there. And I just,
let me add something to this, Ben. So me and Nolly were talking in the green room right before the episode about the differences between surveys and actual data.
Yeah.
And we were talking about the biases people think they have. So I bet you, right, if you put that out and then you ask people, do you think you're more productive at home? A lot of people would say yes. But then if you monitored every single activity they did on their computer, the actual data there would be a completely different story.
I know what side I would be on. And
I don't know. It's very intrusive at that point, though, isn't it? Because that's very contentious, is to monitor everyone's
micromanaging.
Exactly.
And so the other thing that, like, I guess it's kind of community aspect. The reason why I went in, the primary reason I think that you go in and you communicate with people is just problem solving. Problem solving is so much easier and better in person than it is on Slack. And in a business, in anything, you are day-to-day solving problems. How do we do this quicker? How do we do this better? How do we save money? How do we make more money? Like, you're just solving problems, and like being in rooms with people who are all smart, intelligent, on the same wavelength, you just solve problems a lot quicker than online Google Meet, like Slack conversations. You like sat next to somebody and go, oh, do you know how to do this? Yeah, I know how to do that. There goes 20 seconds saved, rather than me spending half an hour trying to figure out myself, because I don't want to Slack someone. Hey, do you know how to do this? And I just think that, like, that my dad used to preach this to me. My dad's a bit old school, and he liked going into the office, and he was like, you just can't beat that human connection and problem solving and just getting to know your colleagues. Getting to know your colleagues on a personal level means that you have such a better working relationship in terms of, like, being efficient as a team, and it's very difficult to build a personal relationship through a screen.
That's like such a pertinent point, because we all know that business, your professional endeavors are, in part, will be propelled, and certainly your fulfillment will be drawn from the relationships that you can have. And you cannot be very honest with people unless you have a foundation, unless you've spent weeks, months of unproductive stuff, having coffee, getting to know people. If you're only doing transactions, which are, I'm asking you to help me on this task, that is not a relationship. That is an obligation. And if you form relationships with people, I can have an honest dialogue when your idea is not very good. I feel more comfortable having that conversation with you. If I have it and we don't have a foundation, I'm just an arsehole that's critiquing you. We don't have that empathy because we don't know the other person. So there's all this nuance to we think of companies as these like separate entities, but fundamentally they are groups of people working together to solve problems and deliver outcomes. That's all they are. So if we're saying all businesses are people, we should have an appreciation for the environment in which people form the best relationships, do the best work together. And I remember, like, this weird void. One of the things I was most proud of when I was running an agency in the US And New York's really competitive, as in for talent. People move around the job market. It's employment at will. You've got very ambitious people in the city. And for 2.5 years while I was there, or almost 3 years, not a single person left the business. Not a single person, which is unheard of, especially amongst young people. We had a very young office. And then COVID hit. And we all bonded together around like saving the business and taking on these problems. We had this enemy that was like the world had just changed. But after 4 or 5 months of being remote, work became transactional for everyone and people just started leaving. And in part, it was a moment that everyone paused and thought, what do I want in life? Maybe they had difficult circumstances. So there was other things going off. But one of the biggest drivers was that loss of connection. And the reason why we were such an effective business and we punched above our weight and we won businesses we shouldn't have won was simply on the relationships that were formed. Some of my best friends worked in that office. We worked together. And I don't think through a screen, whatever you tell me, and to your point, I don't think you could ever found those. Like, we wouldn't be doing this if we didn't meet up together. Not a chance in hell would we be having this dialogue right now.
Right.
That's the truth, right?
That's
Yeah,
very
sure.
true. Yeah.
Yeah, because
It's just another person you meet, fleeting.
Yeah. And
We've-
we all
we've-
have
we've-
large networks. That's the thing, is we all meet a lot of people very regularly. So like, yeah, I still appreciate the physical meetup so much. Like, it means so much more. Like, the thing that I find truly difficult through a Slack message is the detection of sentiment. You know, when are you being serious or sarcastic, or like, you really want this stuff done? You can't convey that without body language, actually.
Yeah.
It's very difficult. And people read things the wrong way too. Like, I've said very factual things to clients and they thought I was being sarcastic. And it's because they've read the tonality wrong, because I am sarcastic in my online personality sometimes. Then they realize, oh no, but I'm very business orientated when you're a client of mine. I'm never that satirical person that you sort of met coming in. Like, I am now the business guy that looks after your account and gets shit done. So that's the sort of change that I find with the digital landscape is, just conveying what you mean and it being interpreted right is very hard when you're not meeting in person.
You could imagine that I didn't get on too well with that because I struggle with that in person, let alone on Slack message. I'm just business only. I don't want fucking chit chat.
Yeah, I know.
Let's don't just say hello to me. That used to piss me off all the time. Hello. No, what do you want?
Wow.
There's a
More
there's a cool
people.
there's a website. It's called I think it's called don't just say hello.
That's great.
I'd send this to occasionally to people if I felt I was on a good enough no hello. Yeah, nohello.net. Like, imagine calling someone on the phone, going hello, and then putting them on hold. Like, I know you want something, just politely say hello, how are you, and then tell me what you want. Now I have to do I reply? Am I ready to take on this task that they now are going to want me to do? No, I need to be able to evaluate it before I reply. And that's just another one of the problems of online. I actually just had a point, sorry, just to go back. I was wondering, just linking back to that freelance, and I was wondering how, if more people go freelance, how does that then impact this sort of, there has to be then more communities. Because I guess if more people freelance, more people working for themselves, more, let's say, isolation. And then I think that's why I think freelancers naturally probably seek more community, like myself. I've never been a community person. Never in my life have I been drawn to communities.
You're void of it.
Since I've now left the work, I work at home all the day on my own. I am now going to events is my favorite thing to do because I get to meet new people. I get to meet people that I would have otherwise met in the office or, colleagues in different teams that I've never met before.
Take a leaf out of that book. I've been much more isolationist, especially because now I've had a baby, but I need to just force myself out of the house and continue to do exactly what you're doing. And my girlfriend's great because she does running clubs, she does netball clubs, she's part of a baby club now, she's part of everything, and she's meeting local people. I'm living in the Northwest, by the way, as far away from my hometown as I could possibly be in the UK. Southeast is where I'm from and Northwest is where I'm living, so it's a 6-hour train to get back and forth to anyone I actually know in this country. So getting down to London and meeting you lads was definitely one of the best things I've done this year. And I wasn't going to, by the way. I was in Milan the day before and I was getting all these text messages like, can you come to London? I had to reroute my flight from Manchester to London. So I was 99% not coming. And then last minute, I thought, you know what? Semrush is a decent brand. Looks like it's got some interesting people going. I'm going to go out of my way to reroute myself and do a physical meetup because I haven't done one in a few months. And that was literally like, I'm so thankful, like you said, Ollie, that we would never have started this podcast had it not been for that actually having a beer together and doing things that's not just talking about work and stuff, you know?
100%.
It makes such a difference, doesn't it? Like the social meetups since the pandemic are more important than ever before. We're in a mental health crisis, actually. You know, maybe that's the statement. Is like, many men are isolated at home as well as women, but like men really are bad social people. You know, women do much better at socializing. So we are now all at home with mental health issues, and no one, like, I had to try and think, I'm going to force myself to go to a cricket club next year. I need to do some sports with some local people or something, you know, like, because everything I do is business meetups or work meetups. And I want to talk to people that aren't in digital, actually, and aren't in AI.
The funny thing is, ironically, I have an opposing opinion to that. Like, I think if it doesn't involve sport, men struggle.
Yes,
men generally gravitate towards communities and events around sport, and I think if there aren't many clubs that I think, unless they're like business startup stuff, like, because you know there are some book clubs in London, you know, and can you guess how much they're weighted towards women? It's like 98% women, right? And I just think, like, why don't someone start if you started a non-fiction book club, would men go? I don't know. I think it would be time to build. If you go to the running club, there's plenty of men because it's sport. Right. I think they use that as a I won't say an excuse, but like something that means it's not going to be awkward because I can just do the sport and you know that's naturally what I've done before.
That's why
for me personally,
are like the number one, like dance.
I'm trying to move away from that. I'm trying to move to going to events where I put myself in a room and I have to just talk. I have to figure out how to get comfortable talking to people face to face, eye contact, nothing else to distract me and think, oh, well, I can just do that. And I don't really have to engage in anybody. No, that's the whole fucking point, is going to engage with people, but people will find excuse even if they go to do something else that stops them from engaging with people. Yeah. It's like, why have you gone?
Definitely.
But yeah, it's just my rant now. I think men struggle. I think they feel uncomfortable in new places with new people, generally, compared to women who are, I think, more naturally social creatures.
It's about nurturing the relationships, though. I think we as a gender do a really bad job of nurturing your friendships. Yeah. There's that funny meme where it's like the boys' birthday chat, and it's like it goes down the message, oh, it was your birthday, 3 days ago, and that's the point. And then for about 4 weeks in advance in the other chat it's like, oh, what we're doing, are we doing this, are we going this? I think we're naturally pretty bad at nurturing friendships, and you see this, the data at a macro level. You look across society, you've got to reinvest in friendships. You tend to either preserve the ones you've always had, but I think it's really important for men to either make new friendships and or really invest in them, because it doesn't come natural. And to your point, Chris,
how would you do that?
Well, I think
what do you mean by invest or reinvest in friendships?
So I'll give you
some advice.
So for me, I go, what we're doing here, right? We met a couple of months ago, met in person. We enjoyed the company. And then now we talk. Yeah, we do this each week, but we also do other stuff as well. We like stuff that's going off. We ask each other questions. I just think you have to create space for it. And like, I'm sure in the hierarchy of your priorities, Chris, me and Ben are relatively low. Like, your family is going to come first, your work, etc. But if you put your friendships right to the bottom, when are you going to nurture them? Everything requires nurturing. Your health, like, there's a lot of things to kind of factor.
I think men put it in the wrong list for format.
Yeah, wrong order.
Friendship should be much higher in the priority opportunities. And it's about being open to it after a certain age, honestly, if we're going to go into the real stereotypes, like men
Yes.
past a certain age, like 30 to 35 or something like that, and then onwards, they find it very hard to get out of the rut that they've created for themselves, because it's a decade-long learning of like, here's how I've always done it, and it's hard to break that cycle. Like, especially I moved to a new area. That was my biggest thing. Is I used to be so good. Actually, I've lived in like 35 different countries because my dad basically moved us around when we were very young, and so I was very good at going into new social circles, meeting new friends, and then it was very difficult every time I had to leave and restart that process over again. But I got very good at it over those years. I've just sort of closed that part of my life down a bit in my later 30s because I've got, multiple businesses to run. I've got our family to look after. I've got other things, like a house to maintain, and, I'm not just living in a flat anymore. And these are the sort of like things that just eat through your time, but it's all excuses. I just need to put 3 hours in the diary each week to catch up with mates and do some exercise and do all of this other stuff. And then that's the sort of like, I even know this because I watched Dr. Huberman and all these other podcasters about how important this stuff is. And yet I hear it and I still don't enact on it sometimes.
I think there's a number of ways to like Ben's question. How do you build on that? It's all about choices. So if you can create spaces where you and your friends can do things, obvious thing is like you do a sporting endeavor, the gym together.
Yeah.
But maybe it's something other than that. It's like you start a business together, you start a podcast together, you do a book club together. There's a number of things you can do. It's just that we're really bad at being proactive in these endeavors. I know I certainly am. I can't speak for everyone
as well.
I'm like that. Like I'll just share where I am with that right now because I've been going back and forth in my head for a while about I've neglected friendships for quite a long time to prioritize myself to get to where I want to, because that's just ultimately what I valued the most. And I have quite a big group of, I would say, my best friends from school. There's 10 to 15 of us, but everybody's growing up, everyone's in relationships. I'm not in a relationship. I find I don't get invited, not because they don't deliberately invite me, just because I naturally now feel like, how do I like put myself back in there into those situations again? I'm not proactive enough. But then at the same time, I've got this now, like all my online friends, all of my, because I'm in my job and my creator, I call my creator friends, and I'm now like transitioning to being more okay with like those creator friends aren't my creator friends, they're actually just my friends now. And it's like, is that okay? Like, can I build strong relationships with people that I've met online that weren't my school friends? Because a lot of my school friends are not interested. They don't do what I do. So as I've grown older and become more passionate about this thing that is now business and social media, and that's my life, I live and breathe it. I have more connection with people I meet online because we're interested in the same things. But the bond isn't as strong as at the moment as like my school friends who have been there for a long time. So it's like in my head, I don't even know what I'm thinking as to whether that's okay, but I feel like that's the transition I'm going through at the moment, is like, how do I manage that mentally? Like, am I okay with that? Am I okay with not seeing my friends that much anymore, but they're still my friends? Like, can I, move forward with building some strong relationships online? And actually those could be some of my RL friends as well. Like, and I don't really know. Yeah. Like, I don't want to grow older, like lonely, not having any friends. Sometimes that scares me. Like,
on that, Ben, the data is horrific, right? So if there was a survey done at scale where it said, how many people in your life could you turn to friendships, where if everything goes wrong, where would you turn? It was framed in sort of that way.
Yeah.
And when you're 18, it was a certain number, and it was something like 5. By the time you get to 25, it was like 3. By the time you get to 40, it's something like 0.8. Like that means that the average person has less than a person they can go to in a time of crisis that they consider a true friend. If that isn't like an alarm bell to say, like, it's an important self-reflection to go, am I investing in my friendships? And the way you described your life, Chris, of going like, I've got this, I've got this, I've got this. It's the complexity as you age and have more responsibilities. And it's like, your friends won't even make if someone said to you, what have you got to do this week, you wouldn't say, I've got to go see my friends. Like that would
No.
never make it onto the list, and it probably should, right?
I think the
So-
challenging thing is we all get older and, as you said, get more responsibilities, but we all differ. Like, my mates aren't CEOs of an agency. They're employees. So they live for the weekend like I did when I was an employee. That's such a different mentality. And actually, I've had some really good excuses lately to meet up with them again. Weddings, for example, and like stuff like that, where I haven't met up with people in like 5-6 years. And now I'm thinking, I should stay back in touch with them again. We should meet up, do these things. So like, but on Ben's point, right, like, it's very difficult. And I think the actual answer to your question is a balance of everyone. Having old school mates that don't have any incentive about where your future career is, having online mates that have, but be careful with them because they may be warped in perspective and your competitors in some case, and it's like a balance of life in diet, a balance of life in friends, in friendship groups. And this is what all famous people say, is their ego gets so entrapped that they need to go back to their old school friends that knew them before they were famous so that they can get a real reality check of life, because everyone in Hollywood's like, sucking their dick to get jobs and stuff, like I'm not fucking holding back, because that's literally what's happening. Quite literally, there are people that do sexual favors in order to get roles in movies and things like this. So it's like, it's also warped at certain perspectives. And I found this with business owners too. So many of them tell you one thing and then don't do it, and it's not real relationships or friends, or it's transactional, it's business-like, and it's ruthless out there, actually. And like, yeah, I think we all need to have that balance of people in our lives that give us every part of the being human experience. Some of my friends don't even know what the fuck I do. When I ask them, they just say, I work in digital. That's as far as I can tell them. Because as soon as I say anything other than that, they'll just be like, what on earth are you talking about?
Ooh, can I ask a question that's like crude to both of you, crudely linked to this? There's a lot of negative connotations when people talk about work and friendships. They say you shouldn't call like work a family because they're not the family. You can be fired. And that's a common narrative. For a long time, there was this transition from transactional work to now we're in it together, and then there's almost a resistance to that idea that you can have and you should have strong friendships, and it's become more about self. Is that a good thing? Is that a bad thing? Because I've always been in work environments where I've worked with people that are like literally my best friends, and I've formed those friendships in work, and I've never seen it as a bad thing. However, there does seem to be it seems to be a sentiment crime to be saying, you know what, I quite like being around friends at work, and I don't know, it's a complex, I think it's a nuanced
I will
topic.
be honest, it is a big red flag for me when a company says they're a family. But
A lot of people believe that.
Yeah, this is because of the way that word is interpreted and who it's been used by in the past. Like, the thing is like you said, it could be a very good thing. And it's like, the word sick is like this in 2024. Kids, when they say sick, that means awesome. We've always known it as a negative word. It's like any word can be conflated with any meaning based on the history of its usage. And so the reason that family and business is a bad mix for me is because everyone that I've encountered that's called themselves a, in quotes, air family is because they want to micromanage and take advantage of their employees. And
It's
so
insincere. It's not
it's
a written.
insincere. Exactly. They've
Yeah, okay.
indoctrinated the word to being something that, is supposed to seem appealing, but actually is a very negative thing, versus you could use it very positively. And like, my interpretation is exactly what you said, actually, is I'd go for beers at the pub after work with these people. Like, these aren't people that I just do, work gigs with. I literally want to meet up with them and go and do other things with them. And that's the family orientated business I would be liked to, be. But that's not the reality of who's calling themselves a family and stuff in the past. So it's a dirty word. It's been indoctrinated. It's unfortunate because so many, like, AI is going to be like that. All these crypto bros and scammers and stuff. AI was 5 years ago the most interesting mathematical computer scientific thing. Now it's scammers, fraudsters, hypesters, all of the above. And that's
Wow.
changed in the course of 5 years.
Wow. Character assassination of the tech industry.
Well, it's not the tech industry. That's the problem. It's the people getting
I'm
into
joking.
AI that didn't come from tech. They are the scammers, and these are the people seeing the
Opportunistic.
opportunists. Yeah,
Opportunists.
opportunists. Yeah.
Ben, your perspective, work and family, can those two things coexist?
What, as in making friends
Can
that
you
you
can it be, should you keep your work separate? Is it okay for like employers to say, you know what, we are a family? Is that just taking it too far?
I think so, because if you build your work culture as like a community, then I don't get why it can't be seen as a community and family, like something uh outside of a, like if it was a group, let's just go back to the freelance model. If it is like a group of freelancers, um like all seeking community because they all had this one shared mission of achieving X, then would you consider those people, would they potentially be considered as family to each other and friends? I think so. You'll find some strong communities of people who are, let's say, you know, digital marketers, and
Mm,
they form friend. They go to these community events because they all want to progress in digital marketing, and they, you know, and it's not too dissimilar from from in a company, really, when you look at actually, you know, what the mission is. You know, everyone's trying to achieve the somewhat similar thing.
mm,
It's just companies historically have not been built that way.
mm,
When it terms, I think startups like have a, well, the reference that you gave to your agency, you could argue that you built sort of a community culture,
mm,
within. I think that's very difficult to do, but if you can build a community culture, then I think then you can, that will nurture, you know, friendships and relationships, and there's nothing wrong with that. If it's got this like startup, I've seen a few companies, some of my friends have worked for them, where it's got like this startup vibe, but also they promote you to do your own stuff. Like you
mm,
can run your own business. We'll support that. And I think companies that do support somebody also having like a side hustle is where you
mm,
find those sort of stronger communities into businesses, because then like you find people within the company who also want to do that. And I think that's when you then find the true shared passion, and that's
mm.
where you could then build stronger friendships and
I
relationships, because you
love
could
that
probably,
definition. Here's why. Think about what you're describing. You're describing a proud father and their son.
yeah.
You're saying, I don't care if you want to leave my business. I want you to thrive. You know, so having a side hustle is not a problem to me as long as it
Mm,
doesn't deter from your everyday work. But most bosses are like not wanting their son to thrive or daughter to thrive. They wanting them to be employees and never leave. You know, they're not going, what's best for you is best for you. They're going, what's best for me is all I care about. And so, yeah, that's the true definition of a family oriented company, maybe, is that you genuinely, no matter if you lose out as a business, want this person to do well in the world. That's what you would do with your own son or daughter, right? Like you just want the best for them. You don't care how they make it or what they do or whether they decide to leave or any of these things. You need to be like omnipotent to that stuff. You need to think about holistically what's best for them is best for them. And I decide, their decision is their decision.
Yeah, and
yeah.
I think I agree with both of you in the sense that it comes down to definition. As you were talking and liken it to a real family there, Chris, I kind of thought you're right. If your brother wasn't meeting your expectations, you're not just going to bin him off, right?
Right.
However, in a environment where performance matters, there's an argument that performance doesn't matter
Yeah.
in kind of settings. So it's more about kind of definitions. And I think what you're describing is good companies will create a sense of community. They'll
Mm.
be sincere in their motives. They'll be fair. They'll be equitable. Um, that's like good teams, right? Fundamentally, you're just describing what makes a good team. And maybe a family definition is too far because it is insincere at a first principle level.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like in any performance based environment, maybe you can't be like a sport team technically can't be a family because
Mm.
it's mediocre. It's based on performance, right?
Yeah, I'll
So,
tell you one other really just like side story to this. So I joined a business when I first got into digital. By the way, we talked earlier about like the internet has given me every single job I've ever had in my career
mhm.
has been because of the internet. No job I've ever had has not involved the internet in one way or another. But when I first got into my first business in the internet, there was a family, a literal family running the business. So the CEO was the father, and then there was an uncle and cousin as the CFO, and a marketing director as another cousin of the business. So a literal family at the top of this business tree. Now the issue with that is the marketing director was the worst employee I've ever seen, and no one wanted to fire him because he was a family member. And it was a family run business. So like that's a massive issue when you've got a literal family inside of a company structure. Is that like you can have just the worst employee of all time, but because they're the like cousin of the CEO, they won't get fired, and everyone underneath them hates working for them. And it was a total nightmare. Everyone else was good, by the way, of the family. Then there were 6 of them, so only 1 in 6 was a just total nonsense. Shouldn't have been an employee member, but it was just can't get fired because they're part of the family that runs this shit.
We cracked the code, fellas. No family in work. There we go. If you want the TLDR, no family in work. Lads, I do want to kind of conclude with the marketing topics. We have gone deep and I've enjoyed the conversation, but I thought it'd be really interesting to get your take on underrated marketing tactics. So let me lay out my stall. So these are things that are maybe not as sexy. They're not talked about enough, but they're arguably highly effective. And I will give you my first one. And it got me thinking. It was inspired by something I saw. So I think the single most underrated marketing tactic is sending an email or a DM to someone that you want to sell something to. And, that is an industry that has been bastardized by automations and bad actors and salespeople. But fundamentally, is there a more effective way than getting hold of someone's email, hitting their inbox, almost guaranteeing they are going to see it, and asking them a question? The trick then becomes, how do you do that effectively? And I see so many of these like manipulative sales scripts and copywriters. But fundamentally, I've come to learn it has to be brevity matters, value matters, timing matters. There isn't any other formula to that other than like we all have egos, we all like someone being sincere. The minute something seems off, seems insincere, seems fake, we reject it. And it goes along with every other automation message that you get every single day. So I think one of the most underrated marketing tactics, and I'm going to call it a marketing tactic, is simply sending an email. So, chaps, what would fall into your camp?
Ooh.
I'll just riff off your one then, boss, whilst Chris thinks, and I think because I think what you're saying is just being genuine, to be honest,
it is.
because
Yeah.
and not using AI,
Yeah,
because
it actually is.
again, it's just everybody's using AI to like write
Mm.
emails, DMs, comments, and
Oh,
stuff,
damn, that was
and
mine. It was going
and
against the grain. That was literally what I was
like
going to say.
when people write genuine stuff they wrote, it sticks out like a sore thumb
Yeah,
because
100%.
everybody is doing fucking using AI. Even like on LinkedIn now,
Over
I started
formulaic
to
on LinkedIn,
posting,
isn't it? Everything's
starting to get
concatenated. It's
comments.
short sentences. It's got these little arrows. It's like, here's your 3 topics. Here's the bullet points. Here's the call to action in the same order written. And everyone starts to look like the same person. It's like some generic M&M or something like that, like it's really bizarre actually to see that. That's so good for us though, because we're so against that we stand out like a sore thumb, as you said. As soon as everyone starts going, oh, here's an app that can write the perfect formula to crack a LinkedIn post, everybody starts gravitating towards the stuff that's not so overly formulaic. So it's a really good observation there. The stronger AI is, and the more it gets used, the more that works as well as a tactic. and it's just going to get more and more and more and more and more and more.
Yeah, it was interesting, there was something I saw that was kind of linked to this, and it was an Amazon review for someone applying for a job. So they were applying for a job, they're trying to get attention, and what they did, it was a copywriter job, and it was for Sleepy Owl Coffee. And what they did is they left the most eloquent review on Amazon that about the coffee, the product, and basically within it described why you should hire this
That's
person.
brilliant.
And obviously, as a consequence of being sincere, authentic, the effort, the care, like they probably got the job, but I certainly know it went viral, right? And they got the founder's attention of Sleepy Owl Coffee and got to demonstrate their skills in the process. And there are so many of those types of things that are just highly effective. That
We
build.
do that all the time, by the way. That's exactly what I teach in my workshops, is how to do creative concepts that stand out on social media to your ideal prospects. So it's the same way as like pitching yourself as an employee creatively to work for that company. Instead you're pitching your agency to get the attention and the work of that company. So brilliant tactics.
Love that. I've
So
got another one.
too.
100%. I've got another one. I wrote down reposting your bangers. If it worked once, it will probably work again.
Paul's
We're in
really
an
bad
age.
at that.
We're in an age now where we are consistently producing new things. And the reality is, we're doing that under the false assumption that everybody and every person sees everything that we say at any given time and remembers. The reality is, in an algorithmic world, there's only a minority of your audience see any one thing that you say at any given time.
That's right.
So stack the odds in your favor. If things worked once, use them again. Particularly if they're original ideas, thoughts, and content.
I couldn't agree with that more, mate. I'll give you a little backstory. So Paul, my co-founder, never has reposted the same thing twice. That means every day for 4 years he had different ideas, and they were just one idea after one idea after one idea. Then I came to the same conclusion. About 2 to 15% of your actual followers get to see every one of your posts. That means that 85% of them didn't see it the first time you posted it. Therefore, you should repost it on the basis that it's very unlikely that that same 2 to 15% of your audience are going to get suggested it again because they already engaged with it once. So it's like, actually, it's a smart thing to do as a cyclical thing, actually up to 3 times a year, it turns out, is in the LinkedIn. I can only talk LinkedIn. I don't know other data platforms. You might say it's totally different in TikTok, Ben, and I would, completely go with your logic on that. But in LinkedIn, if you do it sort of once every trimester, let's say, every 4 months, then you're good to go. Like, I get the same LinkedIn engagement on posting, and I've done this as tests on my own profile and on our company profiles. And in fact, things work well in LinkedIn that were posted 10 years ago. This is not like a having to be up to date thing. If it was a great idea 10 years ago, it's still a great idea today.
Yeah, I agree.
So I think my tactic would be something that I touched upon last episode, is just giving away lots for free. Kind of like, I don't like to say it, but Gary V's, jab, 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 right hook. Like, I think, following the model that a lot of creator businesses are focusing on, which is just, one, giving away content and value for free, then giving away digital products for free, collecting emails, free. Like, basically, I think Alex Hormozy said is like something like, I'm going to like make everything that my competitors charge for and give it away for free, or something. I can't remember what he said. It's something like that. So like, look at what people sell digital products wise and stuff. And this might not be applicable to every single business, but look at like what other businesses are charging for and think, can I actually just do that myself and give it away for free, and just give away so much for free, and then have sort of some offer at the end, which is like your high ticket, your main thing, so that you're just giving away so much value. And I think it's the same model as Gary Vee. It's just like that, like, just give away as much as possible and as feasible for free, and then build that trust, build that value. And then because I see it all the time, I see people charging for stuff that do stuff similar to me, and I think, fucking hell, I give away that in my videos. Like, people do cohorts, right? They do live cohorts, like 4 sessions a month, like you do to get live Q&A. I Q&A on my live stream 3 times a week for 2 hours. Like, and these people are charging $1,000 a month. I'm like, wow. Like,
Some
I'm
people
building
don't
that
know
trust
it
there. I'm
exists.
building in the long game.
They don't know it exists. But one of my favorite things about AI recently, this is really cool, by the way, is my favorite AI platforms give new life to old projects. So, like, for example, I did like a Mid-Journey image gallery this morning on my LinkedIn, and I'd already made that 12 months ago. But there's a new AI now that can animate it and make it move. So these were just static images before. Now they're actually like runway, moving models. So that's a really cool thing with AI, is bringing new life to old things, and they can look like new things again. So it doesn't need to be necessarily that you repost the same thing again and again and again. It's like, no, quickly use AI to bring it to date.
Well, that's the other thing. It's like you're augmenting what already exists.
Right.
And just on your point, Ben, like that's very specific to say maybe agency services or creators, but I think the same value principle works for any organization. If you're a luxury fashion brand and like 99% of people that view you online see you as aspirational, may never buy from you, the whole thing that you're giving them is value, and value can come in many forms. It's not just kind of tangible things. It can be experiences. It can be like showing, inspiring you through
Yeah.
like great photography. It's just, I think the value piece is really important.
It could be anything.
Yeah, it's like not self-serving. I think that's the distinction.
No, yeah, not self-serving. Just
Yeah.
all it has to be, and I think brands just think, they just overthink it, is just education around the thing that you sell in your industry that is solving a pain point for your target customer. And that doesn't have to be specific to what you do. Like you said, if you're a luxury fashion brand and your audience are people who buy that, it could just be a styling guide. It could be, oh, well, we sell handbags, but here's like some like outfits that you could style with, some color like things, like color, like anything that's just going to help people understand how they can style themselves better. Right, that's what
That's
they want to
value.
achieve. Like how, like with the bag itself, like, and just providing that through some form of education, whether that be video, email, blog, whatever medium what you choose to decide. This can be done from any. You can go to something completely unsexy like some construction or some sort of B2B construction. A plumber giving away education on plumbing stuff, what materials, tools, education to their target customer. So when they realize they can't do it themselves, who do they come to?
It's a phrase I love it's ironic that the worst way to sell anything on social media is trying to sell something directly on social media. There's like real irony in, you kind of do everything, but you make people feel something, you give them value, you give them a laugh, you give them some knowledge, you give them something free. Fundamentally, you do all of those things, and that's probably more effective than saying buy my thing now.
Yeah.
In
This
the
is
vast
what brand
majority of cases.
This is what I think. This is what my social strategy would be for a brand that was happy to do it. They would have a main account, which is product service based. So is the promotion, features the product, features the service, and they would have a second account that again is just for like trust, random stuff, but still related, because some brands want to mix that on the same feed. Like, so okay, have a really brand, product, service orientated account, and then have like a more of a wider perspective industry account that is like providing just all sorts of different stuff, an experimental account, let's say, and then you don't even realize it's that brand, because you're like, but then you like, who's running this account? Oh, it's like this, but they're just like is doing lots of just random educational stuff or memes. Even the memes stuff, they don't want to run memes on their main account. I get that. So you create a second account for it. Fucking simple, not difficult.
I know, that's how we manage it on LinkedIn. They keep their normal account, and then we build a community one, which acts as a totally separate thing,
Yeah, you don't even have to call it the same brand, but it just has to be some tied to it. And big companies
the
won't
main
do this,
difference
but smaller
that you
brands
pointed
could.
out, though, Ben, is that they want to constantly talk about their product and their brand and their things. So that needs to stay in an isolated place, because it's
I agree.
It's not valuable, it's not interesting, it's not viral, it's got nothing to do with good social media presence. But it is good due diligence if someone wants to check that they do things right, versus...
Yeah, it does serve a purpose.
Exactly. And this other one does the exact opposite. It can go viral, it can be funny, it can be reflective of your community, it's not always talking about them. It does exactly the opposite of what the main channel does. So I love that separation of channel ideas, and I don't think they should be mixed.
Yeah, I think a lot of brands are going to start to do this, because I already see it somewhat trending with the separation of brands and, the CEOs and the people in the company. They create a separate account where they just do like interviews with CEO, following around the CEOs, probably kind of following on from what Steve has done with growing his personal brand. Talked about it before, like British entrepreneurs growing TikTok accounts, and now companies, I think, are starting to think, oh, okay, we've got the company brand account. Could we now have this like the CEO account, right? Build a personal brand of the CEO, bring back. It's another sort of similar thing, like a second account that links back to the main.
We're clearly all drawn to them, though, because all the people you've mentioned, Gary V, VaynerMedia, Alex Hormozy, Acquisition.com, these have got massive businesses behind them, but you only know the CEO frontman influencer.
Yeah, I don't even know what half their businesses do.
Yeah.
I don't need to, but one day if they
thousands of people in like London, in New York, in LA, and no one knows anyone else that works for VaynerMedia.
But one day, if I need a service that they offer, and I found out they offer it, I'm probably more likely to go to them.
Right.
It's classic brand, it's recall, it's trust, it's everything that is said about you from every interaction. That's a good way to end it, gents, actually. So just to recap our 4 tips that I think we landed on. Send a direct message, but you got to be real. Repost your bangers. And maybe use AI to recreate new versions of your bangers if you want to give a little fresh look to the same idea.
Definitely.
Number 3, give value. Value can come in many forms. It doesn't just mean tangible. Educate, make people laugh, show them things, teach them something. Fundamentally be less self-serving. And the last one is set up a new account to play, an experimental arena. It doesn't have to be social. It could be a Discord. It could be a Telegram. Find a space online where you can show a different side of you and be more experimental. Chaps, I think they were 4 action-packed, wonderful bits of advice. And on that note, I am 15 minutes late for a call, so I will love you. Adios.
Bye-bye.